Sirens haven't sounded yet, but a digital storm is already shaking Côte d'Ivoire. The battle isn't fought with guns or tanks. It's fought with hashtags, smartphones, and courage. In the heart of Abidjan, a generation once silenced is speaking louder than ever. They call themselves La Génération Z, and today they are taking on not just a president, but an empire. For decades, Côte d'Ivoire was the jewel of France's African crown, stable, loyal, predictable. But that illusion is cracking. As President Ouattara prepares for a controversial fourth term, millions of young Ivorians are saying no more. They don't march through the streets like their parents once did. Their battlefield is digital. Their weapon is information. And their message spreading through TikTok, WhatsApp, and X is clear: we are not the colonial children of the past. At the Élysée Palace, panic has a name: Gen Z. Emmanuel Macron knows what's at stake. If this generation succeeds, France could lose not only its strongest West African ally, but also the economic lifeline of the franc CFA, the colonial currency that still ties 14 African nations to Paris. The fall of Abidjan could trigger the fall of France Afrique itself. This isn't just a local protest, it's a generational awakening, a revolt without borders. From Dakar to Lomé, from Bamako to Abidjan, a new Africa is connecting, coding, and confronting the systems that once controlled it. So here's the question, my friends: can France and its empire of influence survive the world's first digital rebellion led by Africa's connected youth? Stay with us until the end, because what's happening in Côte d'Ivoire right now could redefine Africa's future and rewrite France's history. If you believe that Africa's truth matters more than its headlines, subscribe now and share this before the algorithm buries it. In the streets of Abidjan, life looks calm. Markets open, buses move, children go to school. But online, a silent revolution is raging. Every scroll, every share, every video carries a message sharper than any bullet: we are done waiting. Côte d'Ivoire's Generation Z. Young people aged 13 to 28, representing over 60% of the population, has become the country's most unpredictable political force. They don't belong to any party, they don't follow traditional leaders, and they don't trust the system. Their battlefield is digital. Their generals are influencers. Their tools are smartphones, memes, and encrypted group chats. It started small. A few viral clips mocking President Ouattara's rumored fourth-term ambitions. A few daring TikTok creators asking, how can democracy have no limits? Within days, the hashtags multiplied: Ya dégage Nach, Free Ivory Coast, Ya CFA Exit. Within 3 weeks, those hashtags had over 2 million views, and a secret Facebook network of 500,000 members began coordinating online protests and digital strikes. These young Ivorians don't chant in the streets, they crash algorithms. When state media broadcasts a pro-government message, hundreds of thousands flood the comments with the same phrase: we see you. When ministers tweet propaganda replies, overwhelm them in seconds with facts, sarcasm, and screenshots of broken promises. Their motivation runs deeper than politics. It's economic despair. Nearly 40% of the country's youth are unemployed. Diplomas mean nothing. Dreams of stability have evaporated. A fourth term, one anonymous activist said, means 5 more years without opportunity. 5 more years where our degrees become toilet paper. This is not just opposition, it's a generation refusing extinction. They grew up watching the Sahel resist. They saw young officers in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger defy France and declare a new independence. Now Ivorian youth are asking, if they can do it, why can't we? For them, Ouattara is not the only enemy, France itself is. The movement has adopted a new slogan whispered in chat rooms: down with the digital empire. It's a declaration of cyber sovereignty. They are not waiting for political reform. They are building a new consciousness that lives beyond the borders drawn in 1960. The spark came when a leaked report claimed France was secretly funding Ouattara's re-election campaign through stability grants. Whether true or not, it confirmed their deepest fear that their president was just a custodian of the franc CFA, the colonial currency, still pegged to the euro and managed by the French treasury. For these young people, that currency is not just money, it's a symbol of servitude. Across TikTok, videos explained how the CFA system works, how France holds African reserves, how countries must deposit 50% of their savings in Paris, how France earns interest while Africans earn dependency. Overnight economics became rebellion. A generation raised on Netflix and crypto now talks about monetary policy sovereignty and inflation as if they were rap lyrics. This fusion of culture, technology, and politics makes the Ivorian Gen Z uniquely dangerous to the establishment. Their protests are untraceable, their leaders anonymous, their messages viral. Arrest one influencer, 10 more rise. Shut down one page, 3 new ones appear. The regime cannot control what it cannot see. And this movement isn't isolated, it's synchronized. When Madagascar's youth forced the military to intervene digitally in 2025, Ivorian groups studied their tactics. They learned how to manipulate trending algorithms, how to use VPN chains, and how to live-stream protests even under blackouts. A digital resistance school has been born in Africa. To the government, this uprising feels like smoke everywhere, yet impossible to grasp. But beneath that smoke lies fire, a generation that no longer believes in the post-colonial myth of stability. They don't want reform, they want rebirth. The fourth-term debate has become the perfect ignition point. What started as a conversation about one man's presidency has transformed into a war over the soul of a continent. And for the first time, it's not fought in the streets of Abidjan, but in the servers of Silicon Valley. In Paris, the lights of the Élysée Palace never go out anymore. Inside those marble walls, Macron's advisors speak in whispers. They know that Côte d'Ivoire is no longer just another African ally, it's the last fortress standing between France and total collapse in West Africa. Mali is gone. Niger is gone. Burkina Faso has turned its back. If Abidjan falls next, Afrique will officially die. And that fear is now shaping French policy in the shadows. According to multiple diplomatic leaks, Macron's team has quietly approved a $2 billion emergency package to stabilize the Ivorian economy, a soft phrase that really means buying social peace. Banks close to Paris have been instructed to delay any debt collection, while French companies receive quiet tax exemptions to prevent layoffs. The goal is simple: keep the streets calm until the election passes. But that's just the financial front. On the diplomatic side, the European Union suddenly went silent about human rights in Abidjan. No official statements, no condemnations. Reports on political prisoners were postponed for verification. And in the French press, a curious narrative emerged: Ouattara the stabilizer. The same man once criticized for bending the constitution was now portrayed as a bulwark against terrorism and chaos. Behind this narrative manipulation lies a deal too dark to make headlines. Sources close to the Ivorian presidency claim Macron personally guaranteed protection from international sanctions in exchange for a promise Ouattara must safeguard the CFA Franc for the next 20 years. It's a geopolitical blackmail that binds both men together. If the franc CFA collapses, France's control over billions in African reserves disappears overnight, and the youth know it. On Ivorian TikTok, a viral meme shows Macron holding a leash labeled CFA with Ouattara kneeling beside him. Another clip viewed over 3 million times ends with a chilling caption: "If you want our currency, come fight for it." This is the new face of rebellion, one that fights in pixels, not bullets. The French embassy in Abidjan has already reported waves of cyber attacks targeting its servers. Anonymous-style groups calling themselves Les Fantômes Numériques d'Afrique, the digital ghosts of Africa, are coordinating operations from encrypted channels. Every attempt at censorship sparks another surge of resistance. And inside Côte d'Ivoire, the panic is palpable. Government officials issue warnings about fake news and cyber destabilization. Dozens of young activists have been arrested for spreading false information. Yet every detention becomes a catalyst for more defiance. For every voice silenced, 10 more rise online. The climax came when a leaked conversation surfaced between senior French officials and Ouattara's advisors. The transcript allegedly quotes Macron saying, "If you fall, the franc falls. And if the franc falls, France falls." Whether real or not, the leak electrified social media. It became the digital call to arms that united young Ivorians across party lines, across cities, and across continents. The diaspora joined in. From Paris, Montreal, and New York, young Ivorians began staging protests outside French consulates. They live-streamed, chanted, tagged, and mocked. The global audience watched as Africa's most stable democracy trembled under the weight of tweets and viral videos. Meanwhile, French intelligence began to sound the alarm. Russia and China were quietly building contact networks among these young activists. Analysts in Moscow reportedly called it France's digital Afghanistan. A Russian strategist put it bluntly, the more Macron supports authoritarianism, the faster he radicalizes Africa's youth. He is digging his own geopolitical grave. Inside France, even some parliamentarians started to question the cost of defending the CFA system. Why are we financing oppression to protect a colonial currency? One deputy asked on live television. It was a question that echoed across the Francophone world. As the tension peaks, one thing is clear. This is no longer a domestic issue. It's a continental confrontation, a struggle between two worlds, one ruled by treaties, banks, and fear, the other fueled by youth data and freedom. In Abidjan, the government strengthens its firewalls. In Paris, they fortify their embassies. But the Gen Z revolution doesn't need borders. It moves faster than diplomats, smarter than generals, and more relentless than propaganda. The battle for Côte d'Ivoire has entered its digital climax. And this time, no empire can hide behind silence. The tremors from Abidjan are no longer confined to the internet. They're shaking the foundations of everyday life. What began as a digital uprising has now seeped into the streets, offices, and families of Côte d'Ivoire. People no longer whisper about politics. They message, post, and livestream their discontent. For the first time, the fear has changed sides. In cafes and markets, the question isn't who will win the election, but what happens if the youth refuse to stop teachers' report that classrooms have become political forums. Taxi drivers play podcasts about the franc CFA between fares. The elderly fear instability, but secretly admire the courage of their grandchildren. The middle class, the silent buffer, now finds itself cornered between loyalty to the state and loyalty to truth. In Abobo, a young street vendor summed it up perfectly. Before we feared the police. Now the government fears our phones. Across the nation, thousands of young Ivorians are transforming into what sociologists now call digital citizens. They use VPNs to bypass censorship, organize flash boycotts on mobile apps, and build encrypted chat groups that operate like underground unions. When internet blackouts occur, the movement adapts, switching to offline Bluetooth networks or radio frequencies. It's no longer about a single election. It's about sovereignty in the digital age. As one activist wrote on Telegram, they control gold banks and borders, we control the narrative. And that perhaps is the most dangerous weapon of all. French-owned supermarkets and telecom companies are facing silent boycotts. Within weeks, their sales dropped by double digits. A viral challenge. No Kefa Week encouraged Ivorians to avoid using CFA transactions for 7 days. The symbolic protest caused real panic in local banks. Some branches quietly limited cash withdrawals. The result, the CFA Franc, once untouchable, suddenly looked vulnerable because confidence, not metal, sustains a currency. Meanwhile, the Ivorian government scrambles to restore control. Ministers promise dialogue, but the youth demand transformation. The ruling party's attempts to infiltrate online groups have failed miserably. Every fake account is exposed within hours, mocked publicly, and turned into a meme. The movement's echo is spreading. Senegalese students are copying Ivorian tactics, launching digital sit-ins that flood government servers. In Lomé Togolese, youth groups share the same anti-CFA infographics translated into their dialects. What once seemed isolated is becoming a pan-African digital network, a rebellion stitched together by fiber optics and shared frustration. Even in Burkina Faso, where President Ibrahim Traore's sovereignty policies have inspired many young people, are watching closely. The question circulates quietly across forums. If Abidjan falls, does the CFA fall with it? With international pressure mounting and online resistance unrelenting, Ouattara's government turns to old habits, surveillance, arrests, and propaganda. But these tools no longer work. Every arrest becomes a trending topic. Every police raid becomes a viral clip. When the government shut down the internet in Bouaké, the blackout lasted only 6 hours before foreign media picked it up, and donations poured in to help locals access satellite internet. Inside the National Assembly, opposition MPs now quote TikTok videos during debates. Ministers are questioned about hashtags, not policies. The regime still stands, but its legitimacy is evaporating in real time. Even the president's allies admit privately that the system is living on borrowed time. The civil order remains intact for now, but the moral order has collapsed. The people no longer fear the state, they pity it. The digital revolution that began as a whisper has become a roar. What Côte d'Ivoire is witnessing is not merely a protest, it's a civil awakening that could redefine power across the entire continent. In Washington, diplomats are watching Côte d'Ivoire's digital storm unfold with quiet fascination. The United States, long accustomed to seeing France act as Africa's security manager, suddenly finds itself studying a new kind of battlefield, one fought on phones, not front lines. For decades, Paris claimed to maintain stability, but now it's the French model itself that's destabilizing the region. American analysts inside the State Department describe the uprising as a case study in post-colonial backlash. The language is cautious, but the meaning is clear. France's grip is slipping, and every attempt to tighten it only accelerates the fall. Privately, some U.S. strategists see opportunity. A weakened France could open space for a new generation of African leaders, those who embrace digital democracy, transparency, and youth participation. But the White House treads carefully. Publicly, Washington still calls for stability and constitutional order. Behind closed doors, however, cybersecurity teams are mapping online networks of Gen Z activists curious about their coordination methods. In Silicon Valley, social media executives whisper about the African algorithm revolution, a movement proving that narratives, not armies, now determine legitimacy. For the European Union, Côte d'Ivoire's unrest is a diplomatic embarrassment. Paris once presented itself as Africa's mentor in democracy and governance. Now it's seen propping up a fourth-term president funneling billions to keep a colonial-era currency alive. European media outlets Le Monde, Der Spiegel, even The Guardian have begun publishing uncomfortable op-eds titled France's Digital Waterloo and the Empire Tweets Back. In international forums, African diplomats are no longer silent. Representatives from Burkina Faso, Mali, and even Ghana have started to question the legitimacy of foreign-controlled currencies. One statement from a Burkina delegate captured global headlines. If the franc CFA is truly African, why must it sleep in Paris? The question struck deep. In one sentence, it exposed 70 years of financial dependency. While France defends its colonial legacy, Moscow and Beijing see an open door. Russia's media network, RT Africa, now dedicates nightly coverage to the Ivorian digital uprising, casting it as a heroic struggle for sovereignty. Chinese tech firms quietly offer cybersecurity training programs to young African developers eager to shape the continent's next generation of coders and influencers. To Western observers, it's a silent tug-of-war for Africa's digital future. The battlefield isn't physical, it's informational. Control the narrative, and you control the next century. From Brazil to Indonesia, youth movements are studying the Ivorian example. Hashtags like NAR Digital Revolution and No More CFA trend across continents. A Kenyan commentator wrote, "What Abidjan is doing to France, the world's youth will soon do to every outdated empire." It's no longer about Côte d'Ivoire, it's about an entire generation redefining power through connection. Ironically, many in the U.S. see echoes of their own past civil rights movements, anti-war protests, and the battle over freedom of speech. American viewers, particularly the older generation, watch this new African awakening with a mix of nostalgia and awe. The difference. This time, the revolution is wireless, and for France, there's no firewall strong enough to stop it. Night falls over Abidjan, but the city doesn't sleep. Screens still glow in bedrooms, cafes, and quiet alleys. The hum of conversation on encrypted channels replaces the sound of gunfire. No generals, no soldiers, just millions of young people typing their future into existence. The battle for Côte d'Ivoire is no longer just about politics. It's about memory, dignity, and the right to define what Africa becomes in the digital century. The smartphones lighting up across Abidjan tonight are not weapons, they are beacons. Each message, each post, each meme chips away at a system that once seemed unbreakable. France can deploy billions, issue warnings, and twist narratives, but it cannot silence a generation born free from the shadow of fear. Macron's challenge isn't Ouattara's fourth term, it's the awakening of an entire continent that refuses to be managed anymore. For the first time since independence, Africans are not asking for liberation. They are coding it, and that's what terrifies the old order most. Because every empire that underestimated the power of youth and technology has eventually fallen not with an explosion, but with a notification. Yet the question remains, will this movement stay peaceful, or will frustration turn it violent? History teaches us that when hope is denied, revolutions can burn. If governments continue to respond with arrests and internet blackouts, the digital rebellion could ignite something far greater, a political chain reaction stretching from Abidjan to Dakar, from Lomé to Lagos. And what then? Will the West finally listen, or will it wait until the last firewall collapses? For the rest of the world, Côte d'Ivoire is a warning. Power no longer belongs to those who control money or armies. It belongs to those who control meaning. And right now, that power is shifting quietly, relentlessly into the hands of Africa's youngest citizens. The story of the continent's future is being written not in embassies or boardrooms, but on glowing screens in dorm rooms, markets, and buses. So let me leave you with this. Do you believe that the Gen Z movement in Côte d'Ivoire can truly break the chains of the Franc CFA, or will the system adapt, rebrand, and continue to feed off Africa's dreams? Whichever side of history you stand on, one thing is clear. The silence is over. The world is watching. And Africa is awake. If you feel that Africa's digital revolution deserves to be heard, share this video. If you believe that the truth is more important than the headlines, subscribe and stand with those who refuse to be silent.